right. Welcome to our Del Mar Heights School student relocation Zoom meeting. I see we have attendees joining in. We'll wait a couple of minutes to allow people to load. And we still have some people coming in, so we'll wait just a couple more minutes for people to load in for our Del Mar Heights School School Rebuild Student Relocation meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight. Right, and it looks like our attendees, most people who are trying to join have joined in, so we're going to get started. Good evening, my name is Chris Delahanty. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Programs and Technology, and I'm gonna let our team introduce themselves. So Shelley, you go next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Shelley Peterson, Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services.
Hi, I'm Jenny Ha. I'm the Director of Student Services.
Wonderful, thank you. And tonight we will be doing a brief presentation. I'm going to share my screen here so that we can get that started. And let's jump in. My screen has frozen on me. Just a second, sorry. Brief technical difficulty, sorry about that. All right. Wow. Bear with me, folks. I apologize. I'm going to try one different thing here. For some reason, it is sharing my Let's page with you. I think that after this many board meetings, I would be able to share this a little more quickly. I apologize, folks. I think I have it worked out. Let's give it one more try. Okay, well, that is interesting and odd. Ladies and gentlemen, please wait one moment. Again, I apologize. I am trying one other option to see if I can get this up. And if not, we will share the information and be happy to provide the slideshow at a later date. But I have one other way that I may.
Chris, I'm wondering, even if you are able to share when you're in edit mode versus presentation mode, that the main slide you're on is still large enough for folks to see.
Great suggestion, Shelley. Let's give that a shot. Wonderful tech support. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we will go with this. So again, we've just done our introductions, and we will take a look at the topics we'll cover tonight. So Tonight, we will be doing some questions via chat to ensure that we can answer questions. Shelley Peterson, we appreciate having her here. She'll be the moderator for the evening. Jenny Ha and myself will be doing a presentation. And as you can see, we have 5 topic areas that we'll cover. This presentation is focused on the student relocation from Del Mar Heights to the satellite campuses at Del Mar Hills Academy and Ocean School. And with that, we'll be focusing our presentation on these areas, and then we'll be taking questions. So questions that are outside of that relocation, maybe about the Del Mar Heights school design or other topics, won't be things that we can answer tonight because we have an hour set up for this meeting, but we will do our best to get as much information and answer as many questions as we can about the next steps with relocating students in the 2020-2021 school year. So looking at student transportation, I know that student transportation has a big topic, and we've had conversations over the course of the school year prior to school closure. We will be providing busing to and from Ocean Air School on a daily basis, and we are looking at pickup and drop-off locations. As we went through, we had a busing company approved by the Board of Trustees at the last board meeting, and that busing company has looked at a couple of options. Our next steps will be some community input, but also being able to work with the busing company on both the option of picking up and dropping off at Del Mar Hills Academy, as well as community locations. And so based on the input we get from the community, we will look at community locations that would allow for community pickup. When we talk about pickup and drop off at Del Mar Hills Academy, I just want to assure you that pickup and drop off would occur at a time outside of those main rush moments of getting to and leaving school. So 7:45 to 8 o'clock would not be a leaving of buses. Buses would leave before 7:45 from the Del Mar Hills Academy, and drop off from Ocean Air would occur after 2:45. So when we look at that, as far as the traffic piece, we know that we would be able to provide busing, but not have Del Mar Hills Academy's campus impacted at those really high traffic times. We are also reviewing options of Mango Drive for drop-off and pickup in addition to on-sites to try to provide a little bit more separation and a little bit easier opportunity for our community to get onto the campus and reduce some of the congestion that may occur at Del Mar Hills. And again, we will be reaching out with a survey, and that survey will be coming out tomorrow to Del Mar Heights community, looking at interest in the busing option. And then as we move forward and are able to take that input, look at the numbers we're going to have, we'll be able to reach back out and ask community members from Del Mar Heights in 4th through 6th grade to whether they are committing to or more are likely to use the busing so that we can have final numbers that will come early in the summer.
Chris, just before you continue, we do have a question regarding, is the meeting the same information as the next 2 meetings tonight? So if you could
Yes, we will be very much the same meeting. We tried to do it in 3 separate steps so that should you not be able to make one, community members could join, but also so that I imagine that there are some questions from each community that may be a little bit more specific to that community so that we could try to be responsive to individual communities. But the presentation itself will be the same. So if you have to run, please feel free to join us at a later meeting. So moving to the school day. As we look at the school day, we have gotten a fair amount of input as well as we've gone through the process of reaching out to our 3 communities involved in the student relocation about the idea of start and end. And there was a lot of input on having the start and end be the same as the host school. So having our satellite campuses start and end. And so as we move into next year, we will have our start and end will follow the district-wide schedule. And the district-wide schedule we are working on and we are anticipating would be similar to the schedule before school closure. But Jenny Hall will speak a little bit more about the work we're doing in planning for and responding to the guidelines that are coming out from the state and the county. In addition, we will have before school supervision starting at 7:15 a.m. at both school sites. This will provide community members an opportunity to drop off a little bit earlier if they would like. In addition, it will help to reduce some of the traffic at those highest traffic times right before school starts and right at the beginning of the day. Obviously, we will have grade level teams together. Having the setup of having grade level teams together was a priority throughout the planning process. And we will have after school programs at both sites. And we've gone through some work in walking sites with the after school programs team to ensure that we are able to provide a robust after school program for all students that are at the school sites during during the student relocation. And looking more specifically at school operations, the Del Mar Heights School Satellite Campus will have administrative staff at both sites. So that's front office staff. That includes Mr. Swallow having an office at both sites. In addition, we are planning to add an assistant principal who will work with Mr. Swallow, the Del Mar Heights principal, to support students and staff at the two sites. So knowing that we would have two satellite campuses, we are ensuring that there is some administrative staff and support each day at each school site. There will be additional custodial staff at both sites. And as we look at the custodial staff we have now at Del Mar Heights, we'll be able to redistribute at the two other school sites to ensure that we are able to clean and sanitize and stay ahead of the cleaning process at both schools. Again, students at Del Mar at the schools will have homeschool teachers. And what that means is if you are a Del Mar Heights student, you will have Del Mar Heights teachers, whether you are at a satellite campus at Del Mar Hills or a satellite campus at Ocean Air. And Del Mar Hills students will have Del Mar Hills teachers. Ocean Air students will have Ocean Air teachers. What this means is that class size will remain the same, and it also means there's continuity for families as we move through the grade levels, and there are teachers and staff members that our community have grown to know. And as our students move through, that we'll see some of that continuity in going through with staff members that they have seen in their campus in the past. In addition, the PTA and the foundation will remain site specific. That being said, I know that the PTAs at all three sites have been in contact before school closure and had a number of communications. And while we don't know what events and things will look like with PTA at the beginning of the year, this conversation and beginning collaboration between the PTAs will ensure that not only do the sites have the PTA and the support that has been there over the years, but collaboration that will make this a really fun and exciting year for our kids and allow our PTAs to work together and our foundations to work together. So when we are able to move forward to a point where we have some of those other events, we'll be able to have individual ones where it makes sense and then be able to do some collaboration where it makes sense. And then the classroom location. So the last time I was able to come out to the school sites, we were not at the point where we were able to share classroom location per se. But at this point, we've been able to identify open classrooms and identify where portable classrooms would be added to the school sites. We have added portables at Del Mar Hills Academy and at Ocean Air. And part of the reason for this was to spread students out even prior to our COVID-19. And especially at Del Mar Hills Academy, we have some of our class sizes are fairly small. And by having our not combining classes from two sites and keeping a satellite campus and a Del Mar Hills campus, similarly at both Del Mar Hills and Ocean Air, we are able to keep those class sizes smaller and not have those class sizes go to the maximums in the district. So we will have some portables on the campus, but the total number of students won't go beyond the capacity that the schools had. And so this allows us to spread students out a little bit more, and it will allow us to have more options when we look at the potential needs for social distancing. When we look at Del Mar Hills Academy, we will have our kindergarten students together up in these portable classrooms, very close to our restrooms. Our first grade students right now are in these classrooms here. Our second grade classrooms will be here, and then two of our portables. And then our third grade classrooms will be in two of these portables and in a current portable on site. I will say the map will be finalized based on enrollment. So we are in the process of enrollment, and that enrollment is a combination of our kindergartners coming in and then any changes that come over the course of the summer. And so this map will be finalized based on that. But based on the numbers we have this year, we have rolled those numbers up to be able to identify classroom spaces for our students. At Ocean Air, we will have sort of a similar layout. In Ocean Air, our 4th and 5th grade classes are in this wing, and we have an open classroom here, but we expect to have, there will be another classroom based on the roll-up numbers where there'll be another open classroom here. So our 5th grade, we'll have a couple of 5th grade classrooms with the 5th grade classrooms at Ocean Air. There are 2 open rooms here and probably another open room on this wing of the 2nd floor. And so there will be 6th grade classrooms, and should the combination class roll up, which we are planning for right now, based on the numbers we have right now, then we would have the combination class. We'd have 2 6th grade classrooms and a combination class on this wing. This is all the 2nd floor of the Ocean Air School. And it looks out on the playground which has two portables and one that we'll be adding. And this is where our fourth grade classroom. So our fourth grade would be the 3 portables out on the playground just across from the large classroom building. And it puts all of our students in proximity of students their own age, as well as their own school. And we'll set up nicely so that we'll be able to continue with collaboration across grade levels as well. Again, this map will be finalized based on enrollment, and we will be able to then add specific classrooms to the specific classrooms at Ocean Air. But they'll be in that proximity of those 5th grade classrooms, 6th grade classrooms, and portables at the Ocean Air School. And then finally, I'll ask Jenny to share a little bit more about COVID-19 response and the work that we've been doing across the district to plan for our schools.
Thank you, Chris. So as you know, all of the district schools are closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is under the direction of the San Diego County Public Health Order. However, we do anticipate that the health order will change between now and the start of the school year next year. So we are proactively planning. We're currently anticipating like I said, changes to that public health order and really looking at all possible scenarios to get our students back in school next year. So we've already established sanitation protocols. We're cleaning all of our school sites. We've done some extra sanitation of our HVAC systems, and we're looking at ways to implement health restrictions that will be required, any health restrictions required through the public health order. We are considering how to implement and address those restrictions for the upcoming school year at all of our school sites. Of course, our focus is always on the health and safety of our students and staff and how to mitigate the transmission of the coronavirus throughout our district and the community. So one of the options that we will be providing for families for next year is also a comprehensive distance learning option that will be available for families who wish to not participate in our on-site school program.
Thank you, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we will go to questions, and I think I will stop sharing. You can see the panelists. And so I will hand it over to Shelley to moderate and share the questions from the community.
All right. We have a couple of questions about childcare, specifically if students are enrolled in childcare and they attend Ocean Air, will they be able to attend childcare at Del Mar Hills?
Yes, we do anticipate being able to provide childcare at Del Mar Hills for students who may have siblings at Del Mar Hills and Ocean Air. We will be working with Justin Slagle, the manager of after-school programs, so that we can get the numbers and be able to staff and provide space for that. But we have been anticipating potential need for families, especially families who may have a child at Ocean Air and Del Mar Hills, to be able to have them have childcare provided at the same site.
Great, thank you. And then another question about, actually 2 questions about buses. And one is, will there be any pickup sites east of the 5? And will the buses have seatbelts?
Yes and yes. We are planning for, and this will be dependent upon response, but we are planning for potentially a couple of pickup spots based on the feedback from the busing company. We will be, again, sending out a survey to get interest and look at the interest for pickup at Del Mar Hills Academy versus potential pickup in the community. And that will help us to do next steps with planning. And then we will further go and get input from the community based on how where people live that are planning to use the bus, so that we can refine that in-community pickup location. The busing company STA that the board approved at the last board meeting does have some newer buses that do have seatbelts, and that was definitely an appealing piece to their proposal in looking to ensure the safety of our students.
Okay, and then questions about the ventilation in portables, and saying that some don't have a number of windows, so how do we accommodate for airflow?
To be honest, portables actually typically have windows on both sides, which adds to a little bit more airflow when you have the windows open. Actually taught in a portable classroom at Sage Canyon when I was a teacher in the district, and there's some benefit to having windows on both sides. We have been having conversations about HVAC and airflow and ensuring that we are programming and setting up our HVAC units so that we are maximizing outdoor air and while not adding too much moisture that would cause any issues to the interiors of classrooms. That being said, in some of the work that Jenny has been doing and we've been doing with our maintenance staff, we will be giving guidance on keeping doors open and windows open to provide more airflow through the classroom. So long story short, portables typically have windows on more than one side, and actually there's some benefit here.
Great, thank you. And can you also speak a little bit more about class size? So we talk about keeping class sizes small, and we've also shared that class sizes will remain the same. So can you speak a little bit more specifically about that?
When I look across the sites, and we've looked at this across the sites at all of our schools as we're looking to plan towards next year, we look not only at the overall enrollment of the school set, but how many students we have in each classroom and the average across a grade level. And we have actually fairly low enrollment per classroom in especially our K-1-2 classrooms at Del Mar Hills and Del Mar Heights. Part of the benefit of having the portables on site is we are able to keep those class sizes at that low number. Our maximum class size is 22, 24 in sort of extreme situations at times, or not extreme, but at times where we have classrooms and families so that we don't have to pull families apart. And so at times we'll have up to 24, but typically our class size maximum is 22, and we have classrooms under 20 in many of our grade levels in Del Mar Hills and Del Mar Heights in the primary grades. And so we will be staying with our maximum class sizes, but when we can keep them below, we're keeping them below that, which adds to flexibility when we look towards potential social distancing. Jenny, is there anything you would add? Because I know that your work with student services.
Nothing to add about the class size. I know that there will be some questions about the impact of COVID-19 related to that. But as far as our class sizes, I think that you answered that question.
Yes, but that is a nice segue, Jenny. There are questions about COVID-19 and how we are planning for potential reopen to the school year should we have restrictions due to or guidelines due to COVID-19.
All right, so all of that really is to be determined at this juncture. We will be gathering information from our communities next week regarding parents' choices for enrollment for either face-to-face programming or our distance learning program. So it's really impossible for us to determine at this point exactly what the scheduling will look like. We will know more once we know what the number of families that are interested in attending distance learning versus our face-to-face on-site programming, as well as the restrictions based on the public health order. So at this point, we are not committing to any specific modification to a schedule. Right now, it is our desire to get our kids back in school and as close to a regular program as possible. So that is our goal. And we will be making any modifications, like I said, based on number of enrollment and the public health order.
Great, thank you. And then, Chris, when do you anticipate having the results from the bus survey? And some approximations of time. And would students at both schools still be able to be dropped off at the same time?
So I would anticipate having the results to the bus survey, the initial bus survey. We will be putting it out tomorrow, and we'll be giving until the beginning of next week. So we would have results early next week to the busing survey in general. Based on those results, we will then be asking the busing company to give us some ideas on the potential locations where we could do pickup. Should a family have kids at both sites, I would anticipate that one pickup location would be Del Mar Hills, and therefore you could drop off both children at the same time because we would be having an earlier supervision. So if pickup is at, say, just don't quote me, but say it's 7:30 in the morning, you could bring both children to school at 7:30 in the morning, and then the pickup would happen at Del Mar Hills, and the bus would leave, and one child would stay at Del Mar Hills, and another child would be able to go to Ocean Air.
Thank you. And what might social distancing and sanitizing look like on buses?
So busing companies and school districts are looking at this right now, and so it would most likely look like a smaller number of students that could ride the bus. In some cases, I've seen that they are saying one per row. It could be one per seat, depending on how wide the bus is. And then there would be sanitization in between bus rides. So the fortunate thing is that the pickup and drop off in the morning has quite a bit of time in between that pickup and drop off, and then the pickup and drop off in the afternoons. There's more than enough time to sanitize in between the two. We will be working with them on how many students would be able to ride a bus safely. And then we do have in our work with the company, we have a contract that would allow us to have the buses we need, so that it may be that at the beginning you needed a couple more buses. If we had to social distance a little bit more, should things change, then that might change as well. So we'll be following the guidelines, working with the busing company to ensure, number one, that there's social distancing, and number two, that there is sanitization that would follow the guidelines from our Health and Human Services.
Thank you. And Chris, could you say a little bit more about the portables we'll be utilizing at Del Mar Hills, and the number of additional portables that will be necessary?
So we'll be using both portables that are currently on campus and portables that will be brought in. The portables that are brought in are not brand new, but they are in good shape and will be there for the year. We'll also be working with a company to install them, ensure that they have the proper ramps and an HVAC unit. We'll be outfitting them with some of the technology from Del Mar Heights so that they have all of the needs to conduct class. The portables currently on site that are not being used as classrooms, our maintenance, operations, and facilities department staff is working diligently. In fact, I just spoke with a couple of staff members this afternoon who had been working at Del Mar Hills cleaning out classrooms. They've been painting ramps and refreshing, so that those classrooms are in great shape to house students for the coming year as well.
Great, thank you, Chris. And I'm just continuing to scan the chat here. If parents choose not to use a bus and they have children at both schools, how would we accommodate for a staggered pickup?
So we will be working with after-school programs or with staff to provide some sort of supervision for people in that situation. So we will be having supervision in the morning that we know will be district supplied from 7:15, and then we are working through what that would look like in the afternoon. It will really depend on our after-school program's abilities, and then if not after-school program, we will provide some supervision for the half hour needed per give or take after school to be able to allow families to do the pickup at both schools.
Great, thank you, Chris. And Jenny, I'm wondering if you could just say a little bit more. We're getting a lot of questions about what will social distancing look like? What will children be required to wear masks? How will we account for hand washing, etc.? So I'm wondering if you could just speak to guidelines that we anticipate having as we get closer to the start of school that might address that.
Great, thank you. Yes, so as I mentioned, because of the schools being closed at this time, according to the health order, there are no guidelines right now for social distancing for schools because we're closed. However, there are some that the public health departments have put out around childcare and daycare centers. And so we anticipate that there may be some similarities between those restrictions and the restrictions that have been written for daycare and childcare facilities. And those do not require masks for children at this time. They're not requiring employees to wear masks when working with childcare in childcare or childcare facilities at this time. They do have a limited number of students per class, and they are asking that students stay in a group together so that they are not commingling between classrooms, which would mean that students would stay in a classroom with their teacher primarily in one group during the day. We would definitely be implementing hand washing procedures, hand sanitizing opportunities throughout the day. We've ordered quite a bit of hand sanitizer and hand sanitizing stations to be able to provide those for teachers and throughout school campuses across the district. But again, until we know more about the number of families that opt into our distance learning program, we really aren't able to determine exactly what the capacity of each class will be or the physical distancing restrictions or guidelines until we know more about the enrollment numbers.
Thank you. And then, Chris, will you please speak to how you have accommodated for, how we've accommodated for the Spanish immersion classroom at Del Mar Hills?
So for the Spanish immersion classroom, we've really just accommodated in looking at having a 2 kindergarten classrooms guaranteed for Del Mar Hills. And so we know that we'll have Spanish immersion classroom, we'll have their regular kindergarten classroom. And so we've just sort of not staffed, but assigned the rooms accordingly to ensure that there's a space for both of those. Was there more that you were thinking in as far as accommodation?
No, just that Spanish immersion, that program and that classroom has been allocated as part of the count.
Yeah, definitely allocated, and with the understanding that it couldn't be a combination class or things like that. And so it is allocated for and assigned.
Great, thank you. There is a request to share the Ocean Air map again, if you have the ability to do that.
It was an adventure the first time. But okay. So again, with Ocean Air, this to give you a clearer view, I cut off the bottom. Down here is the admin building, the multi-use room is down here, and then you would walk in, and then in the campus, this is sort of the courtyard area, and the gardens over here. If you've been to Ocean Air, this is the first floor, and then this is the second floor. The second floor at Ocean Air contains 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students, and right now we know that there will be some. There's with rolling students up, there will be, I think, one more open class, it looks like, in the second, but we don't know exactly where that is. But we know 2 5th grade classrooms will be in this hallway. We know that 2 6th grade classrooms and the combination class, if we continue with the same numbers that we have this year, would be in this hallway. And then our 4th grade classrooms would be in the 3 portables. And it makes the most sense because we have 3 4th grade classrooms. We have 2.5 5th grade, 2.5 6th grade. So it allows us to have the 5th and 6th with the 5th and 6th grade students at Ocean Air, and also in proximity to each other, and our 4th grade near each other, but also in proximity to that 2-story building, very easy access. In fact, years ago when we first put those out there, we had 6th grade classrooms out there. So it's typically been when we have classrooms that are grade level classrooms and upper grade class that is out in this area.
Thank you, Chris. And then another busing question. Will there be an option to use the bus some days and do pick up, drop off on other days? And yes, that seems to be the gist of that question.
It's a great question. I will bring that because we are doing some next steps with the busing company. I wouldn't be surprised if we're able to do some scheduling, but I think we'd have to have a fairly ideally a fairly defined one, because we want to ensure that we know what students are getting on which day, and we're able to track students getting on and off the bus. And so we've been talking about safety measures just in having students get on and get off the bus from their pickup to the school through our interview process and through our work in bringing the company along. But I will take that down, and we'll certainly bring that up in the conversations that we'll be having shortly with the busing company.
Thank you, Chris. And then will students have access to the host school library?
Yes, we've actually, the principals, one piece I did not mention is we have also had a committee group that has included the principals, site administrators, front office staff, some custodial staff, and some teaching staff. And so we've kind of tried to have some people from each group. One item that's come up is the idea of sharing some of that library books and library space. And so we do anticipate that being a step we will take so that we can bringing a whole library and setting up another library just would not be a great use of space. And we have a library at both schools. So we may be supplementing a little bit Del Mar Hills, but we will be using the library spaces currently there. And then we'll be looking at, do we need to add some books from the library that may go to the actual classrooms or areas for those students that are coming from Del Mar Heights.
Great, Chris, thank you. And then a number of questions regarding access to running water in our portable classrooms.
Say that one more time.
A number of questions. Yes.
So the portables that are currently there do have running water. The portables that are added to Del Mar Hills do not have running water. So what we will be doing, I know that there's been a lot of talk about a combination of potentially hand washing stations, also hand sanitizer, and being able to address the needs to ensure that we can have enough hand washing and hand sanitizing to keep students safe in those classrooms. I will point out that we have a number of portables at Del Mar Heights currently that have no running water as well, and so it's not ideal. And ideally, we would be able to put it in there, but we're just not able for this short period where we put them on the campus.
Thank you, Chris. And then how old are the portables at Ocean Air?
The portables at Ocean Air were added in early 2010s, so they're less than 10 years old.
Great, thank you. And how might the number of families opting into distance learning affect the number of classrooms utilized at either site?
That is probably the million-dollar question, because it depends on how many per grade level opt in. So it may be that you have a smaller class size at a grade level because we have a certain number that opt for distance learning, but not enough that would allow us to consider having less classrooms on the site. It could also mean that enough opt in that we actually have a few less classrooms on the site, and then we would use those for other options related to social distancing or STEAM Plus or other uses at the school. Del Mar Hills has had open classrooms that have been used for a number of reasons over the course of the years. All of our school sites have. So it really will depend on how many students opt for distance learning and at what grade levels. And should we have enough at a certain grade level, it may change the number of sections, or it just may change the number of students in each classroom.
Great, thank you. And then will we be sharing these slides?
Yes, happy to post them.
Great. And then when will demolition on Del Mar Heights begin, and are we on schedule to finish for fall 2021?
We would anticipate demolition starting in early July, and we are still on schedule to be able to finish in fall of 2021. And just as we've planned from the beginning, we will also be planning for the construction to happen in a manner where the final things being done are any work in the northwest corner and our MUR space, so that our classrooms are finished first, our administration is finished, and then any other buildings, so that we will be able to have students in school for August of 2021.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, could you again revisit or speak to all of the conversation, planning, and work that the Return to School Committee is addressing prior to the start of fall 2020?
Yes, so we currently have a committee in place that consists of staff members from each of our departments, and we've really been looking at all possible scenarios and daily operations. What does it take during our day to educate our students, and what impact would the health restrictions have on those daily operations? So we've really been looking at all different components of returning to school, and really planning for any different scenario and being flexible to plan whichever way the restrictions lead us. We will be prepared to determine a plan that's in the best interest of our students and staff. We're looking at social distancing, like I said, implementing the hand washing routines, safety protocols. All of those, again, will really be based quite a bit on our enrollment and our numbers at each sites.
Great, thank you. And then could you speak to the conversations being had around testing and temperature taking as part of that committee?
So we have ordered thermometers for every school site. We've ordered hospital grade thermometers for our nurses. However, like I said, right now, there are no health restrictions for returning to school because of the school closure. But based on the guidelines that are in place for childcare and daycare centers at this point, there is more of a symptom checking to make sure that staff and students are symptom free. So we are prepared to address those needs, making sure that anyone who is sick does not come to school. Any student or staff member who exhibits any sign or symptom of the virus stays at home, and that our families and our staff members are well educated on what to be looking for to make sure that they're ensuring their own health and safety and the safety of the others around us.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, there are a number of questions regarding distance learning. And can you just share when more information will be coming in August prior to parents making a final selection?
Yes, so we will be asking next week for parents to either confirm the enrollment choice that they made in March, or to enroll into the distance learning program, knowing that there will be an opportunity in August to amend that enrollment based on the information that we receive over the summer, the information that comes from the health departments. Families will have an opportunity in August to amend that enrollment. And we will be working over the summer. We have another committee, a subcommittee, working just with distance learning and really taking a deep dive into that to build a comprehensive program that meets the needs of our students. And that information will be still, like I said, still to be determined, and will be coming out closer to the return of school in August.
Fantastic, thank you. And then Chris, can you speak to the school within a school concept that is part of our planning for students, for Heights students?
Sure. So we have plans to have the school within a school, especially be that the students are with their grade level spans of teachers, and that they have their grade level of teachers together. As we went out and spoke with both Del Mar Heights, Del Mar Hills, well, not both, all three, Del Mar Heights, Del Mar Hills, and Oceanaire, there's a lot of talk about it shouldn't be so segregated that students who are the same age don't have a chance to ever interact or don't ever have a chance to make new friends. And so there was a lot of support behind the idea of finding ways where it wasn't completely a school within a school, but we have our Del Mar Heights Satellite School, but then should things be, restrictions be lifted and things be looser, and there be the opportunity for more interaction, that there would be some interaction between Del Mar Heights students and Del Mar Hills students, or Del Mar Heights students and Oceanaire students. And there was a lot of support for that from both the parents and the meetings that have attended the meetings I've held, and the feedback we've gotten from the PTA. So we see a school within a school in the idea that we will have the Del Mar Heights teachers, we'll have Del Mar Heights staff, we'll have a microcosm, a smaller version of that school at the school campus, so that there's all the support needed for the Del Mar Heights school, but then also a desire from all three communities for some integration that would allow this to be an exciting year where new friends were made.
Great, thank you. And some questions about filtered water. Will that be available to students at the other campuses?
Yes, we've added the water bottle fillers with filters. They're already up at Del Mar Hills. I believe they're at Ocean Air, but I would have to double check, but they're in the queue if they are not yet.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, initial percentages based on our preliminary survey regarding interest in in-person learning versus distance learning.
Our initial survey results, we had over 3,000 children represented in our survey. And with the families that responded, 60% responded in favor of attending a face-to-face on-site program. And we had about 40% showing interest in our distance learning program.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, some questions about, it looks like there is a lot of concern about state budget cuts and impacts that might have on our project moving forward. So can you speak to the funding mechanisms and what that might look like for our project?
Definitely. The state budget cuts are typically more towards the general fund, potentially some that would impact special ed, but they would potentially impact like restricted maintenance and items like that. It would not impact our Measure MM funds because those are locally controlled funds. So our Measure MM funds, the funds that we have when we look at Pacific Highlands Ranch and some of our modernization through Mello-Roos dollars, those are locally controlled funds that can't be taken. So funds like that will still be ours. And we actually are required to spend 85% of the funds that we pulled from the bond within 3 years. So we actually have to spend 85% of the 55 million, which is over $40 million by the approximately $40 million by the time we get to the 3 years from the initial pull. So that is all context for the fact that the Del Mar Heights school rebuild would continue and state budget cuts would not impact the Del Mar Heights school rebuild, and as well for Pacific Highlands Ranch because it's funded through our Measure MM dollars and our CFD 99.1 Mello-Roos dollars. Those all are funds that we can't use for anything else, so we couldn't use them to supplement the general fund. We can only use them for facilities.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, still a number of questions regarding specifics around distance learning. However, parents are interested in knowing when approximately do you anticipate in August parents would need to make a final selection for either in-person learning or distance learning?
We will, like I said, to be determined, but I'm guessing that that would be at the beginning of the month, in the beginning of August, and we will be actively planning and developing that program throughout the summer.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have generally answered the questions. Again, more information and specifics coming regarding district or distance learning and in-person learning. And then, Jenny, perhaps can you speak to the special education and how and at which site are we planning for our students to be served?
So our students from Del Mar Heights will be served on the Ocean Air campus. We will have our primary and our upper grade special education classrooms there. Students receiving services in a learning center model from an education specialist will attend either Del Mar Hills or Ocean Air depending on their grade level.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, some requests to see the Del Mar Hills map one more time.
Absolutely. In Del Mar Hills, we are showing our kindergarten classrooms here. Kindergarten is right here for Del Mar Hills. Del Mar Heights we put here because we don't have restrooms in these, and these are close to the restrooms. We wanted to make sure our kindergarten students were nearby. should we have 3 first grades? We have 3 kindergartens. We'd have 3 kindergartens here. 3 first grades would be in this proximity, so they're near each other and near on that K1 kind of area. We would have a second grade classroom here and 2 in the portables. I will say those portables will be at the north end of the blacktop. For those of you that have been around the district for a while, there was 1 portable in that area. We will have 1 where the 1 was, we will have 3 next to it. So it's kind of a line of portables that will be next to the fence that overlooks the garden. And then we would have 3rd grade and then a final 3rd grade in the existing portable that is on the other side of the blacktop, but still within view of those and not a great distance from the other 3rd grade classrooms.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, can you speak to other services in special education, such as speech or OT, APE?
So our related services are provided at each of our campuses throughout the district. So those services will continue to be provided at each school site. So any student at any school who requires speech or occupational therapy or adaptive physical education will continue to receive those at whatever site he or she attends.
Great, thank you. And then again, still receiving a number of questions about distance learning versus in-person learning, which I think, Jenny, you've spoken to. We will continue to flush those out as the summer months and the changes with the virus occur and the restrictions and or guidelines become more clear as we get closer to opening. And so I think that we're nearing the end of our time together, and all right. I think that should do it. It looks like we've addressed all of those.
Thank you. So let me first thank Shelley. I appreciate your work in moderating. Having done many of you on the attendee list have probably been in a lot of Zoom meetings at this point, and it is very helpful to have somebody who's able to read through the chat and provide the questions for us. So thank you very much for a great job moderating. Jenny, thank you so much for your support and expertise with the work we're doing. I do want to let you know we will continue to plan based on the guidance that, as Jenny shared, we have further guidance coming. Even as Jenny talked about knowing when that final decision on distance learning and not giving an exact date is because guidance comes out at slightly different times. And if you know that guidance is coming a couple days from now, we'd want to make sure that we saw that guidance and we were able to have our families get that input. So we will be making plans and we will be making decisions based on the guidance that we get and the restrictions and the necessary steps that need to be made to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency. We will be in touch with our public health and our state, local, community, but we are going to continue to plan for 2021. And so we're planning for the ability to open with as many students as we safely can. And we're also planning to be able to support distance learning for those that need it and support any adjustments to the number of students we can have on campus. So a lot of work going into it. We will continue to do the work and we'll continue to share out. And we look forward to a fantastic year next year. Thank you very much for spending some time this afternoon for all of your questions. And yes, we will post the slides and we hope you have a great evening.
And Chris, where will the slides be posted was a question?
I will post the slides on the Dahmer Heights School Rebuild webpage so that it's sort of centralized and connected to that project.
Fantastic. And then there was one more question that I can answer very quickly. It was about the limited number of students that are allowed to be in our childcare facility right now. So for school-age children, that limit is 12 children per classroom with social distancing measures in place. And that is in place for our summer camps as well, which are planned to start on June 15th. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have attendees joining in. Thank you. All right. Okay, so it looks like most of the attendees are in. Good evening. My name is Chris Delahanty. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Programs and Technology for the school district. And we'll introduce ourselves and then jump in. Shelley, would you do it next?
Hi, I'm Shelley Peterson, Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services.
Hi, I'm Jenny Huh. I'm the Director of Student Services.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shelley and Jenny. So welcome tonight. I am going to share my screen and we will do a brief presentation. We had a little technical difficulty in the last meeting, so I'm just going to share it in this mode rather than watching me fumble around for a minute and a half. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we are going to share a little bit of information about the Del Mar Heights School student relocation. This meeting is for Del Mar Hills Academy. However, if you weren't able to join the Del Mar Heights Academy, Del Mar Heights School that we just have, or if somebody's from Ocean Air School, the presentation will be the same. We tried to set it up for 3 different schools so that if there were any slightly different questions, they could be asked with their school community. So same presentation if you're just on the last one, but we are happy to have you if you're joining again. So the process tonight, we will be looking at 5 topics to cover. We will be taking questions in the chat mode, and those questions will be, let me just make sure that I have chat set up correctly. And it looks like we did. So we will be taking questions in the chat mode, and we have Shelley Peterson here who will be moderating. We will also be saving the chats, and the questions that we will be answering tonight are specific to these 5 topics. This presentation and this event tonight is really about the Del Mar Heights School Rebuild student relocation, sharing information about the relocation and the process, and being able to share a little bit of information about the planning the district's done, looking at the response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. So we have about an hour set aside. We look forward to being able to share some information and then answer questions from you. And we will save the chat so that should there be questions that aren't related to these 5 topics, we will have that and be able to look at it and respond to it at a future date. So moving forward, I'm going to start with student transportation. So as we've gone through, and I've been out to sites and shared prior to the public health emergency, one of the big topics of conversation was student transportation and drop off and pick up in the morning and the afternoon. And so we will be having busing to and from Ocean Air on a daily basis. It is optional for our Del Mar Heights students in 4th through 6th grades. We will be doing a community input survey to the Del Mar Heights community that will be coming out tomorrow to really get a better idea of how many we're planning to take advantage of this. And we'll be looking specifically at pickup and drop off locations. At the board meeting last week, the board approved a busing company that will be providing this service. They looked at doing pickup and drop off not only at the Del Mar Hills Academy location, but also being able to do that pickup and drop off at some community locations. And so we will be asking the community whether they're interested in Del Mar Hills Academy or community locations, or whether it really matters and they're just interested in busing. A couple of concerns and things that have come up about traffic have led to some pieces with this. So I want to share that with the busing, any pickup and drop off that we do at Del Mar Hills Academy will occur outside of those really kind of high traffic times, 7:45 to 8 in the morning and 2:30 to 2:45 in the afternoon. So we are definitely planning for it in a manner that would not add to the traffic that would be happening in the morning at those high traffic times. We will be providing some before school supervision, and we're working with Del Mar Hills staff to review the idea of Mango Drive for potential drop off and pickup for students coming to and from Del Mar Hills Academy, as well as the typical drop off and pickup that would happen at Del Mar Hills Academy in the loop at the school. So we're looking at a number of options for drop off and pickup to remediate and eliminate or reduce some of the potential traffic that may occur. And again, that survey will go out to the Del Mar Heights community tomorrow, and we'll get it back at the beginning of next week. So we'll be able to get some information and be able to follow up on that information. And then as we move forward and working with the busing company and identifying people who are interested in busing, we'll be able to identify some of those community locations for pickup. As we look at the school day, another item that came up, a topic of conversation throughout the conversations that we had when I came out to the school communities, was the idea of potentially having a split start or having school start at the same time. There was a lot of input throughout and feedback about the idea that it would be best to have the start and end of the school be the same for both the Del Mar Heights Satellite School and Del Mar Hills Academy, or Del Mar Heights Satellite School and Ocean Air School. And so we are planning for the school to start and end with the district schedule. And I say the district schedule because should there be any adjustments needed to be made based on the guidance and the guidelines that we are provided by county health, then those adjustments would apply to all the schools in the district. I mentioned with the last slide that before school supervision, we will be having before school supervision starting at 7:15 in the morning at both Ocean Air and Del Mar Hills. This is not just for Del Mar Heights students, it's for Del Mar Heights, Del Mar Hills, Ocean Air, and it will provide the opportunity for a family, if you'd like to get going a little bit earlier in the morning and have students get to school a little bit earlier, we will be able to provide supervision. It also would provide some support to, say, a family that has students going to both Del Mar Hills and Ocean Air, where you could drop off students at Del Mar Hills who are going to both schools. Again, for the school day, the grade level teams will be together. So kindergarten team from Del Mar Heights will be together. The first, the second, so some of those the grade level teams will be together. And of course, Del Mar Hills and Ocean Air will have their grade level teams together. And then the after school program will occur at both sites. And we have been working with after school programs and their leadership team to ensure that we have the staffing and the locations and the ability to serve all the students that we would imagine would be attending the after school program from the Del Mar Heights School, Del Mar Hills Academy, and Ocean Air School. As we look more specifically at school operations, we have talked about how we are setting up the Del Mar Heights School satellite campus at each school site. And we're calling it the satellite campus because we have grade level segments that are at the school sites, and we will have Heights administrative staff at both sites, as well as additional custodial staff at each site. We also, since the last time we've shared out, as part of that admin staff, we are planning to add an assistant principal who will be helping Del Mar Heights principal Jason Swallow. And so the assistant principal will mean that there is administrative staff every day supporting the school sites and the satellite schools. As we shared earlier in the school year, we will have homeschool teachers, and that means that Del Mar Heights students would have Del Mar Heights teachers, Del Mar Hills students, Del Mar Hills teachers, and Ocean Air students would have Ocean Air teachers. I share this because it provides continuity for our students and our families, and it also provides it means that our class sizes will remain the same, because by having our Del Mar Heights students roll up to Del Mar Heights teachers, we will have the same class sizes that we were seeing at those school sites. And in addition, PTA and the foundation will remain site-specific. That being said, our PTAs had begun collaborating before the school closure. I know that there was actually a lot of sharing and collaboration and looking at potential events. And while at this point we know that gathering in larger groups may not be something we could do outside of school hours with the PTA, as things change and as there may be those opportunities, we know that the PTAs are working closely, and there will be the ability to have both opportunities for combined activities as well as having those special activities that were important to the school sites that may be site specific. So I'd also like to share a little bit about the classroom location. So since the last time I've shared, we've been able to get a little bit more specific on where students would go. And when we look at the Del Mar Hills Academy, we had some open classrooms. We also had some portable classrooms that could be used. And then we will have 4 classrooms, portables, that will be added. First of all, these 4 portable classrooms will be at the northeast corner of the blacktop. So they'll be up near the fence that overlooks the garden. And all 4 will fit across, so we will be able to fit them 4 in a row. When we look at grade levels, we have the Heights kindergartens. This map will be finalized based on enrollment, but should we continue to have 3 kindergarten classrooms for Del Mar Heights, those 3 classes would be in these portables up here, because we don't have classrooms with restrooms, and we want to make sure that the Del Mar Heights students, kindergarten students, are fairly close to the restrooms. With that taken up, then we would put Del Mar Heights first grade students in this area here. It keeps them close to the first grade and the first grade areas. It's still relatively close to the restrooms and allows for that primary play area. And And then we would have second grade, and third. And so that would kind of lay out the classrooms for our students. And then we do show a conference room in here where we would be able to have a combination of added conference room space and ability with a few more students on campus to potentially have copiers and other things like that we'd be able to use or hold meetings. When we look at Ocean Air School, we have Del Mar Heights students in the two-story building. And so in Ocean Air, we have a big two-story building. Our primary grades are here, 1st through 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th are up here. And we'd have our 5th graders on the right side in a couple of classrooms with our 5th grade students at Ocean Air. We'd have our 6th grade in the wing with our 6th grade students. And right now there's a 5th, 6th combined classroom that we would anticipate rolling up. And so the 5th, 6th combined classroom would be in this wing as well. So our 5th and 6th grade students on the 2nd floor. And then our 4th grade students would be in current portables and an additional portable that are on the blacktop adjacent to or across the blacktop from the two-story building. Again, this map will be finalized based on enrollment and on the final numbers and classroom openings, but we know that those spaces will be available in that two-story building. And then finally, I'll ask Jenny Ha to share a little bit more about our COVID-19 response, some of the work that she's been doing with our district.
Thank you, Chris. So as we are all aware, our district is under direction of the San Diego County Public Health Order. So we are in a school closure because of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we are anticipating that there will be changes to the public health order. And so we are proactively and actively planning to return to school in August. We're looking at sanitation and health protocols to be implemented throughout all of the schools in our district. We are looking at the current health restrictions that are in place for childcare and daycare centers and anticipating that there may be some similarities in the restrictions that we will be needing to abide by in the fall. But we're prepared to really be flexible and be prepared to implement any of the health restrictions that are given to us by the public health order. And as always, we're focusing on the health and safety of the students and staff in our community. And one of the options that we have available for next year will be for families to continue to participate in a distance learning option. For families that need to, based on their own personal needs, that they would prefer that their students access learning through the distance learning option.
Thank you, Jenny. And with that, we'll take questions. Again, we've covered those 5 topics, and our focus is on the Del Mar Heights School rebuild, student relocation. Shelley Peterson will be our moderator tonight. Thank you very much, Shelley. And she will be keeping an eye on the questions coming in through the chat feature and then sharing them with Jenny and myself so that we can answer them for you tonight. So, Shelley.
Let's see. Thank you. Chris, just to get started, can you speak to, and perhaps Jenny, you can as well, some of the conversations and practices we already have in place to address the cleaning and sanitizing of school sites? So we talk about ensuring safety and that we'll be cleaning and sanitizing, but what does that look like? What does that mean?
Absolutely. So our district has made investments in sanitizing. We can spray and sanitize, which we've been doing for a while, and it allows us to sanitize a room. It sits for a small period of time and then it kind of kills on surfaces. So any germs or viruses that we may have. So there will be regular use of that sanitizing to be able to go through and do a general sanitizing. The other big focus areas are high-touch surfaces. And so high-touch surfaces are areas where we've been working with our maintenance and operations staff and our director, Mike Gallus, and looking at not only the process, but also the staffing to ensure that we have staff in there and we can sanitize those high-touch surfaces, wipe them down and clean them, whether it be doorknobs or restrooms, items like that. And so I know Jenny may be able to speak because the committee has been working on fleshing that out and what that looks like across the district.
Yeah, so like Chris mentioned, we do have a committee that is addressing really all of the possible scenarios for returning to school. But one thing we are prepared for, regardless of how the restrictions change, is to keep our school clean and sanitized. And so Mike Gallus, who is is on our committee, and he has taken the responsibility for ordering the supplies and equipment that we need, and also organizing, scheduling the cleaning schedules for the bathrooms, the hard surfaces throughout each classroom, and like Chris said, across the district.
And even say to that end, that's the cleaning and sanitizing. There's also then, the ordering of standalone hand sanitizers that are over 60% alcohol, so those could kill any germs. So that also looking at hand washing and hand sanitizing for on the student end, so that we're protecting our person, and then also having our maintenance staff and operations staff doing the cleaning throughout the day as well.
Great, thank you. And Chris, is there a fee for before school supervision? And if our portables are being used for classrooms, where are we thinking that the after school program will be located?
So there won't be a fee for before school. We will be the district will be providing supervision at 7:15. We are looking at a combination of places like the art studio, which isn't used on a daily basis. And so some scheduling to ensure it's an area where we can have after school programs. We have used the Innovation Center in the past for groups. And so that would be a place where we would be looking at having students for after school program. And we've been working with after school program on how many spaces they would need based on the enrollment. So we anticipate those two spaces being the major after school program. The nice thing is both of those are pretty open classrooms, which would allow us to separate students. There would also be use of outdoors to be able to kind of spread our students out a little bit more. It will also, to be totally honest, depend on the guidance that we are given on how much space and whether we are using outdoor more or using the class. We will be using those classrooms, but how much we use outdoors as well on top of it.
Great, thank you, Chris. And then Jenny, I know you've already touched on awaiting guidelines prior to opening, but can you talk about our back to school committee? There are many questions about what would social distancing look like and what might a school schedule look like if we have more restrictive guidelines as we return to school.
So it's really impossible at this point for us to know exactly what the scheduling and the school schedule would look like for next year, or even modifications to the class sizes at this point, because the public health order has directed schools to be closed. They have not provided any guidance for schools. However, looking at the guidance that they do have in place for daycare centers and licensed child care facilities, we would anticipate that the restrictions may be similar, and they do involve classrooms staying together, students staying in a cohesive group and not commingling between classrooms, so staying with their teacher throughout the day. We are anticipating that there may be some restrictions as far as no restrictions as far as masks. Students do not need to be wearing masks during the day. Teachers can wear them if they would prefer to, but it should not be a restriction based on the guidance that has been given to our daycare centers. But again, right now, much of our scheduling and determination for planning for next year will depend on our enrollment and the number of students that opt into our distance learning program compared to the number of students that plan to attend our schools face-to-face. So once we have a better understanding of those numbers, we'll know more about the capacity at each school site.
Great, thank you. And then similar, questions along those same lines, but related to portables on blacktops. But what might it look like during recess and lunchtime and play times with all of the students on campus, and what are some potential or initial planning regarding social distancing and safe play spaces and lunch areas, etc.
So we are fortunate in our district that we do have extra spaces on our school campuses. And so we really will be looking to utilize all of our spaces to ensure the health and safety of our students and staff, and really looking at scheduling and ensuring students have not as much shared space. So really students having their own spaces throughout the day. And like I said, utilizing all the space that we have available on campus to ensure that our students still have an opportunity to play, really looking at our outside spaces and utilizing our entire campus to ensure that students have as close to a normal day as we can possibly accommodate.
Thank you. And then Chris, could you speak to the HVAC systems and how we are and have prepared to clean and sanitize those? The question really relating to the virus and airborne spread versus touching or the virus living on objects.
Definitely. So we have been working with our team and then our HVAC, the company that does the maintenance for it, and looking at how much we can open them up to allow the maximum amount of fresh air in through the HVAC system without bringing in too much moisture or other items that might cause any problems with the facility itself. So we're looking at that piece first. Every about 15 to 18 minutes, it completely cycles the air through with new air at this point. And so we're looking at, is there a way to make that even a quicker turnaround? We will be telling staff that it is a best case to keep doors or windows open when available. And we're reviewing other potential items that could be used to potentially sterilize with HVAC systems. So we're looking at ensuring that anything we bring in is something that will actually do the job that we're looking for it to do. And in addition, we have done a cleaning of all of our HVACs. We've replaced the filters and cleaned the coils while students were out to ensure that we've taken steps prior to getting students in. A question that came up in the last group too was related to portables themselves, and we'll have in Del Mar Hills a number of portables. They actually typically are easier to ventilate because they typically have windows on both sides. I taught in a portable when I was a fifth grade teacher, and there's actually some benefit to that cross draft. So in portables, they'll be able to also open windows as well as potentially doors to add to that cross draft and exterior air that they could bring in.
Thank you. And then Jenny, once again, we have lots of questions about what a potential schedule might look like as we start the new school year. And how is that impacted or not by having the Del Mar Hills students, the Del Mar Heights students on the Del Mar Hills campus?
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Yes, like I said, our capacity at each class will really depend on enrollment, and this is for all of our school sites across the district. We recently, in our recent survey, we had quite a few participants, and we had 60% of our families indicate that they would choose for their child to participate on site, with 40% being interested in distance learning. So that gave us a little bit of an idea for a framework for planning. And so we really are planning, our committee is looking at all different scenarios. And again, this is for all of our campuses across the district. And our response based on the pandemic will be no different at Del Mar Hills than at any of our other school sites. So we will be looking, like I said, to implement those restrictions. And we do anticipate that they will change before August. So the restrictions that are in place right now for the childcare facilities, we do expect them to change.
Great, thank you. Chris, a question about the number of students relocating to both Del Mar Hills and Ocean Air School.
It's about 235, I think, going to Del Mar Hills from Del Mar Heights, and it'll depend on our kindergarten numbers. And then going from Del Mar Heights to Ocean Air in our 4th through 6th grade class, we'll have approximately 210 that are going to Ocean Air.
Great, thank you. And will the schedules for Del Mar Hills, Ocean Air, Del Mar Heights students, will their school schedule look the same as school schedules throughout the district?
Yes.
Okay. And Jenny, can you speak a bit more about how parents and when parents will have the opportunity to opt into either in-person learning for their children or into the distance learning program?
Yes, so all families completed their enrollment forms for their students in March. So we will be rolling out a confirmation next week that will allow families to either confirm that they would like to continue with the choice that they made on that student enrollment form, or that they would like to opt into the distance learning program. And we understand and we are aware that there are some uncertainties involved in making that choice. And so we will be allowing parents to amend that decision in the beginning of August prior to coming back to school at the beginning of the year.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, can you speak to busing and approximate, or rather, how are the MM funds used, and do they cover busing for the rebuild of Del Mar Heights School?
So Measure MM funds can be used for the reconstruction, and it can also be used for moving students off campus. I would have to check with business services to be sure if busing is paid out of Measure MM funds or out of another fund. I know that our portable placement is paid out of Measure MM funds, and all of the portable placement is paid out of Measure MM funds. So I wouldn't want to misspeak. I need to check to be sure, but I can give you that answer shortly.
Great, thank you. And then again, the current order is for childcare, that there are 12 students per class. Jenny, can you speak to the fact that you can't translate childcare numbers to school numbers when we start the school year?
Right. So like I said, we have no guidelines for return to school, because the guideline right now for the public health order is that schools remain closed, with the exception of daycare and childcare facilities. So we really it's pure speculation to think that we may be somewhat aligned with those numbers. However, that information has not been provided yet by either the State Department of Education or any of our local health departments. So we will be planning for all scenarios, and will be flexible and able to adapt based on the new health orders as they come out and are updated.
Great, thank you. And Chris, or Jenny, can either of you speak to social distancing on buses and what the current recommendations are?
So we'll be looking at the current recommendations and what the recommendations are as they change over the summer. And so as we've just brought the busing company on, we will be working with them to ensure that we're, number one, following the guidelines for social distancing, and then number two, able to accommodate the number of students that we need in a safe manner. So the buses will have social distancing, whether that means one student per seat or one student per row. I'm not sure about quite yet, but they will be able to sanitize prior to pickup, and then again and drop off, and then prior to picking up from Ocean Air to bring back to Del Mar Hills or to their place of residence. And so there will be a combination of sanitizing and of social distancing on the buses dependent upon what the guidelines are as we get to the end of the summer.
Perfect, thank you. And then Chris, some questions about the timeline of the project and moving forward. So perhaps you can speak to the date and the board meeting where the board approved the project and approved moving forward with the project.
So at our board meeting a special board meeting in mid-May, the Board of Trustees approved the CEQA documentation and the project to move forward, and we are continuing to move forward with the Delmar Heights rebuild. We would anticipate demo to start in early July, and the project is still on pace to be completed in August of 2021. So we see no reason why it would not be completed in time for students to rejoin that school in August of 2021. As we've shared at previous meetings, we will also be phasing the project so that classrooms are built first and then administration. And then if there's anything that runs a little bit long, it would be an MUR or a space like that, so students could still start on time.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, which children are eligible for buses to Delmar Hills?
It would be our Delmar Heights student to Delmar Hills.
Correct.
Well, Delmar Hills, we are not doing busing to Delmar Hills. It would be to Ocean Air because Delmar Hills is within the same boundary as Delmar Heights. So the busing would be to Ocean Air for our 4th through 6th grade students.
Perfect, thank you. And then Chris, perhaps you can speak to, there's a question about the Delmar Heights students joining the Delmar Hills campus. And with that increase in size, can you speak to the committee that has been in place since last year, or the early this year, involving both principals or all 3 principals from all 3 schools and staff from both schools, and how they have discussed mitigating that so that the students from Delmar Heights feel welcomed and will be joining those campuses?
Yeah, so I think a couple of pieces to that. One, we have had a committee that's been working from the beginning of the school year, really. It's a combination of the principals of the school sites, somebody from the front office, somebody from maintenance, and then a cross-section of staff from the school site so that we could really get all of the perspectives in the room. Shelley's been on the committee and Mike Gallus has been on the committee, so we kind of ensure that we're covering all the bases. And so we've looked at a whole array of items, from moving items from Delmar Heights to Delmar Hills, to how students would be welcome, to how we will ensure that teacher parking works out. So really from the big things to the smaller things. And it's been very honestly heartwarming in those meetings too, and as well as in some of our community meetings. We started with the idea of a Delmar Heights satellite campus, and we talked a lot about having their own space. And pretty much every meeting I've been in, we've had people talk about how do we welcome students onto the campus, and how do we have opportunities for this to be an exciting year. And so while it may not look like we were originally thinking, because we aren't sure exactly how the year will open, there has been a lot of talk about how we could welcome students on. And now it may be that it's a virtual pen pal, or it's another opportunity that may be a little more virtual to start off with, but allows for connections and gets people connected between the 2 schools, so that it's not, while there is a component of it being satellite campus, there's still an interconnection between the students and staff at the schools.
Great, thank you, Chris. And then can you speak to the outreach that you've been involved in and the communication and participation of parents from all 3 school sites, specifically through the relocation as well as PTA leadership coming together and planning for that? So
we've striven to come out and have community meetings and be able to get input from the community. We had a couple of meetings in the fall. We were planning to come out earlier in the spring, but obviously things changed with the public health emergency. And so getting input from the community was a big part of that initial piece. We've also worked with the principals and worked with, I know that the PTAs have had collaboration. So the idea of it not just being Delmar Heights and Delmar Hills. I know that Delmar Hills and Del Mar Heights were sharing ideas about inviting each other to PTA events prior to things closing down. So there were a number of steps taken to be able to not only get input, but also to try to bring some connection between these schools and get people collaborating both at the school level and then at the parent level prior to things all closing down.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, can you address the conversations that have been had with your back to school committee in planning for the potential of a second wave, and how the work on the distance learning committee is helping to prepare for ensuring that students, should there be a second wave, should we be prompted with another temporary school closure, how distance learning would be able to interface and support the continued learning of students?
Mm-hmm. So again, if we were faced with a second wave or a school closure, that would come from the public health department, and we would be following and that would be in response to an order from a public health order. So that being said, we know now how to pivot and provide that distance learning to all the students in our district, which is how we responded to the pandemic initially in the middle of March. And so we are considering, our committee is definitely considering those possibilities as we're looking at the scenarios. So we are looking at the distance learning program for the families that opt in, but will also be prepared for the students who are at school if there becomes a situation that they need to be at home for a week or a short period of time, that we would be able to implement a home learning program for them as well.
Thank you. And then Jenny, can you speak to the direct contact you have with San Diego County Health and Human Services regarding students on campus and how we ensure the health and safety of both students and staff?
Yes, so we are working with the Health and Human Services Agency through the County Office of Education. Our school nurses are actively also working with the health agencies and the County Office of Education, and meeting with them weekly and taking guidance from them as far as any restrictions or recommendations that they have regarding new guidelines for checking symptoms or for health restrictions, cleaning, sanitizing. But yes, we're actively working with them weekly.
Great, thank you. And then another question about distance learning. Can you speak to the work the subcommittee is doing to prepare for content and staffing when we ask parents to select again in August?
Yes, so we have created are creating another committee, a subcommittee to our back to school committee that focuses primarily on the creation and implementation of the distance learning program, really looking at research-based programs and how to move forward with offering that program to students for next year. Again, that will continue, that the work on that committee will continue over the summer, which is why we're offering parents an option to amend their choice prior to the start of the school year as more information becomes available.
Great, thank you. And then a question about a question about school campuses being open. Are they open now? Are fields open? And do you anticipate they will stay open as we continue to plan for relocation?
Yes, our fields are open across the district. I was actually just walking Sage Canyon and Carmel Del Mar yesterday, which are joint use sites, and they have opened up the parking at Sage Canyon Park. So even the city has opened many of their parks, and we are following suit with doing a very similar reopening, in that we are opening it up for exercise. We have marked off the play stacks because of the high touch surfaces and the potential there. But we do have the field's open, the blacktop's open. We're asking the community to follow the same social distancing guidelines that the county public health has put forward: 6 feet distance, not playing, sports together unless you're from the same household, and those kind of things. But we have opened them up across the district to allow our community to be able to get out and get some exercise, especially as we move into summer.
Great, thank you. And then just many questions about what distance learning will look like, who's on the committee, professional learning for distance learning. And as Jenny just spoke to, that planning is ongoing over the summer. And then can you, Chris, address one more time how the steps you have taken to mitigate high traffic periods during pickup and drop off, specifically on the Del Mar Hills campus?
So again, we're looking at reviewing Mango Drive as a drop-off pickup area in addition to the traditional loop that we have at Del Mar Hills. An earlier time, we're at 7:15, where we will have staff who will be able to accept students on campus, and therefore separating it out so there's less of a flow coming in, and also to make it a little bit easier for families who may have students at 2 school sites. And then we will be looking to the work of our committee on beyond those steps. Are there steps that need to be taken to go beyond what would be the traditional steps we'd make to reduce traffic and reduce foot traffic? And if there are further steps required, then that's the work that our committee is doing to kind of ensure that we are taking steps to reduce or modify numbers.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, if you could once again just address the purpose of tonight's session regarding relocation as part of the board's decision to move forward with this project. So if you could just revisit purpose, that may be helpful.
Well, yeah, the purpose tonight really was to share more information about the Del Mar Heights student relocation. For those of you that were able to join us, we held a couple of meetings in the fall. We talked about being able to come back and share information and hold more meetings as we got more information about busing and some other things. And unfortunately, one of the big keys to that more information was, what does the start of the day look like? What does busing look like? And to be totally candid, we put out a request for proposals and didn't get a response the first time. So we had to go back out and do another request for proposals. We got a response, and a solid response from a busing company that will be able to meet our needs. But the process took longer than we thought, and therefore it took a little bit longer to come back and share new information. So this was our efforts to continue to reach out and share information and share steps we've made in the planning and next steps that we are taking. And was there another piece to that, Shelley, that you...
Just that the purpose of this event.
The purpose is moving forward
on the board, making the
within the grand scheme of the Del Mar Heights School rebuild. We are at the point where the project has been approved and is moving forward, and therefore there is the ability to move forward with the plan for relocation. So with that moving, and with the fact that Del Mar Heights School will be planned to be demoed over the summer, we wanted to share the next steps in the planning we've been doing in the interim.
Super, thank you. And then continue, and then again, several questions about distance learning, which Jenny, you've done a very nice job of addressing. So thank you for sharing that work is continuing over the summer, and details will be shared with parents in August prior to them making their final selection. And then Chris, would you mind sharing the Del Mar Hills map again, and specifically taking a look and talking about the blacktop and play areas for students?
Sure. So this probably isn't the best map to discuss the blacktop for you, but if we looked at the Del Mar Hills Academy, this would be really over kind of here, because it would be the north end of the blacktop. It will cut into one basketball hoop, but beyond that, we'll be able to maintain the rest of the blacktop items that we have. We will still be able to have the Gaga pit and the other basketball court that's down here, some of the running lanes, so that there will be 4 squares. So the blacktop will still have the bulk of the items that are currently on it in this area. There will be no impact to the green area, the play field, or the blacktop on the west side of the campus where our primary students play.
Excellent, thank you. I'm just taking a moment to scroll through and see if there are any questions that haven't been addressed already by both Chris and Jenny. There's one about timeline of the project and anticipation that the project will be we will be able to complete the project according to the timeline identified.
Absolutely. So the timeline for the project is we anticipate it being able to start the demolition and then the site groundwork over the summer, and then start working on buildings in the early fall. And based on the timeline that we have, we do not see any reason we won't be able to complete it on time. We have had a lot of people bring up the idea that construction always runs long and things like that in meetings, but it doesn't necessarily always run long. And we have sizable companies that do this for a living and get their work done on time. And so part of our selection process was making sure that we had a team, not only the company, but the team within the company that has done jobs like this, that have a shorter turnaround and can get it done in time. So we are, I'm certain that we will be able to get it done in time. We'll be able to have students on campus, and to sort of hedge our bets and ensure that we have the plan together. We will be building the classrooms and the administration first, and finishing with the multi-use room, so that should some unforeseen condition happen, we are able to have students and administration on the campus while there's finish up work, rather than having it push out further.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, can you speak to or address, and this will be our last question this evening, can you speak to the ideas of staggered lunch, staggered recess? Should that guideline be in place when we reopen in fall?
So again, this will all be dependent on the public health orders and any restrictions, but we are considering modifying schedules throughout the day and looking at reducing shared spaces between students during classroom or during recess and lunchtime. But all of that will need to be determined as the health orders are updated. But we are continuing to prepare and proactively consider all of those different options.
Excellent. And then just before I turn it back over to Chris, there is a question about thought exchange. And because there are so many questions about distance learning, you hopefully have received information about participating in thought exchange, which will go live tomorrow from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then that will provide an opportunity for both teachers and our parents to give input about distance learning. And all of that input will help guide our committee's work over the summer. So that will be addressed. And again, I bring that up because there are so many questions about distance learning and the numbers of students who opt into distance learning, and in person does have an impact on how we plan for site usage, which does affect what it might look like at Del Mar Hills and the Ocean Air campus. So I will go ahead and turn that over. And then Chris, could you just revisit the chat feature and what we are doing with the chat feature?
So chat feature, and also just to the Thought Exchange point, you will get an email with the link for Thought Exchange tomorrow. So if you are interested, please look for that around noon. You'll have from noon to 8. It's a great platform. You'll have the opportunity to share ideas and also look at others and be able to give input on others or rank others, so that we can really get that community input. So we're excited to launch that. The chat feature for this meeting, we are saving. And so as I said at the beginning, there are some questions that may not have applied directly to the Del Mar Heights School Rebuild student relocation, but we will take the chat so that we can take a look at it and ensure that we hear and see all the questions that come to us. It was asked in the last meeting if I would post the slides, and I will do that at the Del Mar Heights School Rebuild webpage. Those will get posted either later on tonight or tomorrow morning. And then I just want to say thank you to Jenny for all the hard work she's doing on the reentry and coordination with our county health and being able to answer the questions, because it is a big part of all of our facilities planning we're doing this year. So thank you very much, Jenny. And I want to thank Shelley for moderating and being able to take the time to go through. I know that there's a lot of chat. It's really hard if you're on a Zoom and you're trying to look at questions and response. So Shelley, thank you very much for being here with us tonight to do the moderating.
Yes, and just there is an attendee who has asked that I answer her question above, and I'm sorry, I'm just not sure Suzanne, I'm just not sure which question you're referring to. So please feel free to reach out to either Chris, myself, or Jenny Hutt, and we'll be happy to respond to you.
And then we will continue to work as a district on next steps, both with our Del Mar Heights student relocation, as well as with the overall district planning and how this fits into it, with more information to come. We truly appreciate you taking the time and asking the questions. It really is helpful for us to be able to have this. If we can't do it face-to-face, at least as face-to-face as we can get. So I appreciate your time tonight, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
We'll get started in just a moment. All right, it looks like we have mostly finished the initial loading in. Welcome to our Zoom meeting tonight. My name is Chris Delahanty. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Programs and Technology. Thank you for being with us. I'll let our team introduce themselves. Shelley, you want to go first?
Hi, Shelley Peterson, Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services.
Hi, I'm Jenny Hutt. I'm the Director of Student Services.
Wonderful. So again, thank you for being with us tonight. Tonight, we will be doing a brief presentation. Forgive me for the slides looking like this, but we had a little technical difficulty in the first round, and I figured we'll just go with this viewpoint, but you will get all the information you need. Over the course of our evening, we are really looking at covering a couple of specific topics, and it's really around the student relocation of our Del Mar Heights students. Our Board of Trustees passed the CEQA documentation and approved the project at a meeting in the middle of May, and we are moving forward with the next steps now in the rebuild at Del Mar Heights, and part of that is relocating our students for the 2020-2021 school year. So the topics we're going to cover tonight are the student transportation, school operations, our school day, classroom relocations, and then Jenny will share a little bit about our COVID-19 response across the district, because that plays in as well. We will be accepting questions via the chat feature. You will be able to share your questions via chat, and Shelley Peterson is our moderator this evening. Thank you very much, Shelley. So Shelley will be able to view the questions and be able to feed those to Jenny and I as we get to the end of the presentation. I will say we are focusing our presentation and our Q&A on these topics here, really focused on student location. We do have about an hour together, and we want to make sure that we get all the questions we can answered related to student relocation. That being said, we will save the chat, and should there be questions that are beyond that or those that we aren't able to answer at the time, we will have access to them so that we can review them and take a look at them after the fact. And with that, I will jump right in and share a little bit more about student transportation. As we've gone through this process of developing the student relocation and sharing with the community, one of the biggest items that has come up, one of the biggest topics has been student transportation and really the drop-off and pickup and traffic and how that impacts the school. So with student transportation, we will be having busing to and from Ocean School on a daily basis. Busing will come from Del Mar Hills Academy area itself, or from community locations for students who are part of the Del Mar Heights School. What we will see and what we anticipate is that the pickup and drop off would be outside of those highest impact areas. And we're still working with with this being specific to Ocean Air, with Ocean Air Parks and Rec on the ability to use that parking area as a potential drop-off and pickup zone. Excuse me. In addition, we'll be reaching out to the community in Del Mar Heights to get community input on this starting tomorrow, and that will go through the beginning of next week. That will help us to understand how many students may use the buses, or whether those buses should do most of their pickup at Del Mar Hills Academy, or whether we should be picking up in the community locations. And that will help us to flesh out the actual schedules that will go with that. I will say, I know that we've been talking about busing for a while. We have put a whole lot of effort into requests for proposals, and our first request for proposal didn't get any response. So we went back out and did another request for proposal, and that led to a solid response from a good company. And so we were able to have the board approve that at our last board meeting. I share that because I'm sure if you've been following along and been at meetings, it feels like we've been talking about busing coming on soon for a while. And while we tried to make that happen, it took a little longer than we hoped, but we have a good company on board, and we'll be doing some work to keep things moving. As we look forward beyond that to the school day, we did have, as we went out and we had conversations with the community at the beginning of the school year and then into the fall, we talked about staggered start times or the same start time and what that start and end looked like. And the feedback really led towards having the same start and end time at the school. And so to that end, we will have a start and end time that will follow the district-wide schedule. As Jenny will share a little bit further on, we are still working on how the response to COVID-19 looks and taking every idea in. And so when we have a response and we have the guidance that will come, that will be fresh at the end of the summer, that schedule will align across the schools, Del Mar Hills, Del Mar Heights, and Ocean Air. We will also be having before school supervision starting at 15 a.m. This is for all of our students at Del Mar Hills and at Ocean Air and the Del Mar Heights students. This will help to provide an opportunity for families who may have students at two schools. It will also allow for families to drop students off a little bit earlier and beat that morning rush. And so this will be staffed by district staff and will be 5 days a week so that our students can arrive a little bit earlier. It will be another kind of mitigation that will help us to allow, when we think about the traffic at the beginning of the day. Our school day will have grade level teams together. So the grade level teams from Del Mar Heights will travel together, first grade together, second grade together, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. Obviously the grade level teams from the home schools will be together. And then we will have after school program at both sites. And we have them work with our after school program management and looking at locations for after school program and ensuring that we are staffing and planning for it. And then as we look at what the new year brings, the new school year brings, we will work with them consistently to ensure that that program is set up and we have after school program for our students at all three schools. So that brings us to the school operations. And as I say three schools, we have talked about it being a Del Mar Heights school satellite campus. And what that means is that there are going to be specific grade levels that are going to a host campus. So kindergarten through third grade will be going to Del Mar Hills, fourth through sixth grade will be going to Ocean Air. With them will be administrative staff at both sites and additional custodial staff at both sites. With the administrative staff, we will have office space for the principal. We are also planning to add an assistant principal to Del Mar Heights, so there will be administrative support to the school site on a daily basis. There'll be front office staff that will support each school site, and then there will be additional custodial staff to support both with the planning and the work that we're doing in responding to COVID-19, but then with the general work that's being done at the school. Our homeschool teachers for Heights, Hills, and Ocean Air really means that you will have homeschool teachers for your students. So if I'm a Del Mar Heights student, I will have Del Mar Heights teachers. If I'm a Del Mar Hills student, I'll have Del Mar Hills teachers. And if I'm an Ocean Air student, I'll have Ocean Air teachers. This really allows for some continuity from grade level to grade level, some continuity for families. And it allows us to keep our class sizes the same because we're rolling up the same number of students. So when we go from fourth to fifth grade, the class sizes that we've had should remain about the same unless there's students moving or things like that. But there's not a huge amount of attrition in our district. So class sizes remain the same, consistency with our teachers as we look at our satellite campuses and our home campuses has been something that's been shared as being important, and we know we value in developing this. Also, our PTA and our Del Mar Schools Education Foundation will remain site-specific. Before the public health emergency, we had really begun to have some real collaboration between our PTAs. Our PTAs were talking together, talking about planning for the next year, talking about events. And while that may look different to start the year, they still will be working together. And it should, when there is the time where we can have events, there'll be events that might be combined between the two PTAs. And then there will be things that might happen that are specific to the school site. So it's exciting because as we've gone through this planning, I've heard repeatedly from staff and from parents that while we have the satellite campuses, we want to make people feel welcome at the schools. And there have been things done with PTA that would do that. And then our teachers, we have a committee that's worked on the planning from the staff side with principals from each site, teachers, custodial staff, front office staff. At that level, they've talked a lot about how do we do some integration in connecting students as they go to a new school, and how do we make them feel welcome. And so there are a lot of steps that were being taken, looking at face-to-face, and now we're looking at ways, could we do something with an EPAL or a Zoom, or as we get into the new year, how we connect students as they get onto the campus. And so that will be a priority as well. So I'm going to share, I'll quickly look at Del Mar Hills, and then we'll look at Ocean Air because this is more specific to Ocean Air. But we do have some site maps to give a general layout. These maps will be finalized based on enrollment, so they aren't final yet, but they give us a general idea. So at Del Mar Hills, we do have kindergarten students in the portables, existing portables up at the top, close to the restrooms. We have first graders in the other portables in this classroom. We have 4 new portables that will be up at the north end of the blacktop overlooking the garden. And they will be split between 2nd and 3rd grade students. And we'll have a 2nd grade classroom and a 3rd grade classroom in existing spaces in the school. At Ocean Air, we are anticipating another opening up in the 4th, 5th wing on the 2nd floor. And so 2 5th grade classes would go up in this area on the 2nd floor. We have 2 open classrooms. We anticipate potentially having another one up on the other side where the 6th graders are. So we'd have our 6th grade and then our 5-6 combination class. We have a 4-5 combination class right now at Del Mar Hills, Del Mar Heights, which would become a 5-6 combination class. And so we'd have that in this area. So the nice thing here is we have our grade levels near each other and near students of their own age. And then we have 3 4th grade classes, and there's 1 extra portable that will be next to the current foundation room. And so those 3 would house our 4th grade students just across the blacktop from the upper grades. And it kind of puts us in a position where we have our students combined in fairly similar location. And we'll have finalized locations as we are able to finalize enrollment and numbers and placements for our Ocean Air staff as we move into the summer. And then finally, I'm going to ask Jenny to speak a little bit more about the COVID-19 response and the work that she and her group are doing.
Thanks, Chris. So as you all know, we are currently under a mandated school closure under the direction of the San Diego County Public Health Order. And we do anticipate that that order will change. And so we are actively and proactively looking and planning to return to school next year. So although we're really looking at all scenarios for returning, we understand there are a lot of questions and really a lot of different possible options for returning, many different scenarios and really possible outcomes. So we know that parents and families have lots of questions about what school will look like in the fall, and really we're not able to answer those definitively until there is an update to that public health order. So as we're planning to return to school next year, we are preparing, like I said, for all options, but we are putting some health and sanitation protocols in place to be prepared for that return. And we're also looking at offering a comprehensive distance learning option that will be available for families who do wish to have their student not attend on-site school next year. And families, we know there are a lot of questions about that as well. So we will be asking for families to confirm their enrollment next week, to choose either to opt into that distance learning model or to continue confirm their enrollment choice that they chose back in March. However, families will also have another option and another opportunity in August to amend that choice based on information that comes out around that same time with more details about the distance learning program. Like I said, we know there are a lot of questions that we're just not able to answer at this time, but please know that we're considering every scenario. If you've thought of it, we've probably thought of it and heard of it as well. So we're really looking at every different option. And beginning tomorrow at noon, families will also have an opportunity to provide input on via thought exchange on our distance learning program.
Thank you, Jenny. And that thought exchange email will be coming to you tomorrow around noon, so please look for it. It will have a link that you'll be able to use to join. Thought exchange gives you an opportunity to provide your ideas and also look at others and give your thoughts on or rank other ones so that we can get input from across the district, from our staff and our community. So we're excited to utilize that with the distance learning. So that is the information we wanted to share. Again, we covered those 5 topics we talked about at the beginning, really looking at being able to speak to the student relocation. And I see that there are some questions that are starting to come in. And I know that Shelley will be taking over now, and she will be moderating for us and sharing some of those questions so that we can do our best to answer them for you.
All right, yes. A couple of questions about with the Heights students coming onto the Ocean Air campus, does that affect the ability for intra-district transfers for current Ocean Air families?
No, it won't affect intra-district transfers for current families who are already enrolled at the school.
Great. And then will there be a charge for before school supervision?
There will not, no.
Great. And perhaps Chris and Jenny, what consideration has been given to STEAM classrooms?
Do you want to speak, Jenny, to the work that you've done? Well, let me say that we, in looking at this planning prior to the public health emergency, we were looking mostly at the host school having their classroom and then having more of a push-in model for Del Mar Heights. However, there are times where those host school art labs or science rooms may not be needed, and then Del Mar Heights might use it. With the shift to potential guidelines that might restrict some of that movement, that may change. So I know there's been some conversation in the committee, and Jenny, maybe you want to speak.
I think the main point is that we're really looking at all spaces. We're looking to utilize all spaces throughout all of our campuses throughout the district, and reducing shared spaces as much as possible. So really looking at utilizing available spaces, classrooms, conference rooms, whatever we need, outdoor spaces as well, to ensure that we're able to be flexible and meet any updates to the health restrictions.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, can you explain a little bit more about class sizes, or Jenny, class sizes remaining the same, and that we have low class sizes? I think that thinking about what may come, there being a need to reduce class size and class sizes staying the same. So 2 separate issues, and I think needing to be addressed to provide some clarity for our families.
Yes, so by keeping our students with the home school teacher, we're using spaces that where they would end up being in a different classroom just at a different school. In this case, we have one portable that's going to Ocean Air, and that's being done because we want to ensure that we can keep students with their home school teacher, but it also keeps those class sizes from just a general perspective of 22-to-1 or 27-to-1 at that level or lower, because that's what they were rolling into this school year. Should we have a public health guideline that states that we must reduce beyond that, then we would be using the spaces we currently have. because, and then if there is flexibility to use a STEAM Plus space or another space, but we still only have the number of teachers that we have. And so in the end, we would have to work on how do we provide instruction to students in a different manner, because we still have the same number of teachers. And if we have less students that can come, then we have to look at a model that allows for students to be there at different times. And then we have to look at that sanitization and cleanliness and the steps we take to ensure that we are keeping those areas clean.
Great, thank you. And then can you speak to reducing density at lunch and on the playground with the added number of students, and what conversations have been had to address that?
Okay, so we do have a committee in place that includes staff members from each of our departments. So we're really looking at our daily operations of all of our schools across the district, and really examining how we would be able to provide meet the needs of students as far as during recess, socialization periods with their peers, and lunch, while following those health restrictions. But again, so much is going to be dependent upon the update to the health order, and also to the number of students that enroll in our on-site schools. So as we get information about enrollment, we'll be able to make more informed decisions about what the programs will look like and what modifications need to be made throughout the student's day. But much of that, like I said, is going to be dependent on our numbers, our enrollment, and the number of families that opt into our distance learning programs as well.
Great, thank you, Jenny. And then Chris, how long is the relocation? How long do we anticipate it lasting? And then there are still several questions about busing and transportation and traffic. So perhaps you can share some of the conversations or revisit early on in the presentation, conversations and plans to help mitigate that.
So, I wrote down busing and transportation. Forgot your first. That was the first half of the question, Shelley. I'm sorry.
The first question was, how long is the...
Yes, how long? So forgive me, because this is our third presentation. So if I didn't say this, I'll say it again. And if I did, again, forgive me. In May 12th, the board approved the Del Mar Heights, the CEQA document, and the project, which approved the project to move forward for the rebuild. So with that approval, we've moved forward with application for the Department of State architect, and the next steps are going forward in bidding the project. And we anticipate the project to start with demolition in early July. With that early July start, we are very much in line to be able to finish the project by late August of 2021, which puts us right in line to have students back on campus to start the 2021 school year. The question comes of what about delays and other things like that. We've done two things. One, we will be phasing it in a manner that builds the classrooms first, the administration, and then into the multi-use room. So you could move students on with some finish up to be done in the multi-use room or the STEAM Plus areas, which has been done in projects in neighboring districts in the recent past. But we also took the time to really work on bringing on a company and a team that has done projects like this that take a shorter turnaround and need to get done in this kind of a timeline. And so we're confident with the team as well, because the team that you bring in is the key to getting it done, not just the company. So we have a strong company with a strong team, and we're very confident we'll be able to get it done in time.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, can you speak to conversations your committee has had regarding supervised care before school, social distancing, and conversations and plans that are being considered?
Yes, so one of our, we have subcommittees within our committee, one of which includes our early childhood division and our after school program director as well. And so we are in constant conversation with them, looking at how to offer both of those services as we move forward in the fall. So we are looking at the restrictions that are in place right now for school-aged childcare, as well as our early childhood daycare programs. So those restrictions that are in place right now, we're prepared for continuing to implement those strategies and those restrictions with social distancing, the health precautions that are in place for checking symptoms, for health and wellness of staff and students. And that would continue as we're doing right now, that would continue into the fall as well.
I realized I wrote down the busing and transportation and then didn't answer that one. So Shelley, just to the busing and transportation question that you asked,
Sure.
We are at a point where we have a busing company on board. So the busing company has been approved by the board. We are working with that busing company now and working with the Del Mar Heights community. I'll be sending out a survey tomorrow so that we can get more detail on how many people anticipate using the busing and a little bit more information on where they would like pickup to occur. Based on that information, we will work with that busing company on the pickup and the drop off, and then get a little bit more, ideally, maybe not commitment, but a stronger sense of we will be using busing and where, so that we can solidify plans on busing during early summer to midsummer and have it all worked out well in advance of the school year.
Great, thank you. And then I just want to address the chat that Chris outlined the purpose of the meeting this evening. So Chris, perhaps you can revisit that. When the chat is flooded with repeat questions from the same individual or a group of individual, it makes it a little bit difficult to monitor so I can answer the questions of the whole group. So Chris, perhaps you could restate the purpose of tonight's meeting, the board decision to move forward with the project, and I will continue to do my best to monitor the chat thread.
Yeah, so again, the board did approve the project and approved moving forward with the project. So we're moving forward with the planning and the next steps with the project, and with the bidding and the process to rebuild Del Mar Heights. So with that in mind, one part of that is the relocation of students to Ocean Air and Del Mar Hills. And so we really started this in having conversations over last summer with the Del Mar Hills and Ocean Air communities. In fact, I think we had our first conversation about this time a year ago. And then we came back out in the fall and we had another conversation, and we had planned to come back in the early spring, but a bunch of that was contingent on busing. And they shared a little earlier, we had some issues with our request for proposals. And so now that we have that information and the project is approved and moving forward, we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to come and share more information on the project and the process for the student relocation, and be able to answer questions related to bringing students to Ocean Air and the steps we'll be taking with that process.
Great, thank you. Chris, is there a minimum number of students who will opt to take advantage of busing in order for busing to occur?
No, we could do as little as one bus, and with the social distancing guidelines to start the year, we are assuming, and we'll be working with them to on that social distance, those guidelines, but there will be a smaller number that can be on a bus. So we will be able to bring just one bus if we needed to, and there was a small number that wanted to use it. And we have the ability to increase should there be an increase in ridership. So we have a little bit of flexibility in the number of buses we use based on the contract we're working with.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, can you please address the number of restrooms needed to accommodate the number of students that will be at Ocean Air? And is there a need for more restrooms on the Ocean Air campus given the inclusion of our Del Mar Heights students?
Yes, so there isn't a need for more restrooms. The Ocean Air School was built for approximately 800 plus students. And when it is built, there are guidelines and code on the number of restrooms that are to be built. When we start the next school year with students, depending on a distance learning model, say nobody from either school took up on the distance learning model, Ocean Air right now has a little over 600 students and a large sixth grade cohort. And the enrollment numbers tell us that we will probably have a kindergarten group that will come in that will be 30 to 40 students less than the sixth grade group that's leaving. So that means that next year, the Ocean Air population will be in the 570 to 580 range. And the Del Mar Heights group that's coming over is 200 to 210. So you're talking about a 780, 790 maximum enrollment that would be on campus, which is less than the capacity the school was built for. So with that in mind, we will have enough restrooms for the students. But I can also say, I know Jenny and her committee have been working on additional considerations for hand sanitization and hand washing and things like that.
Jenny, could you talk about, I think you addressed this initially, but can you please say a little bit more about why we are unable to give specifics about either the distance learning program or what social distancing may look like at school sites, and why we are waiting until August to finalize our school numbers?
So like I mentioned earlier, parents will have an opportunity to confirm their enrollment choice next week. Once we have that basis for staffing, we'll be able to be a little bit more prepared for knowing about numbers at each site. Of course, parents will have an opportunity, like I said, to amend that choice based on the information that comes out over the summer. Right now, we are preparing, and our ideal situation would be that we would open in August in a normal, typical day for our students. However, we are also preparing for the possibilities of the restrictions under the health order, which may include social distancing and increasing sanitization, hand washing, all of the restrictions that we're seeing currently, and we're prepared for that. We have a committee that's been looking at all different options for coming back, but also really looking at building that distance learning program. So we are creating a new subcommittee that includes teachers and principals who will be really reviewing and vetting some research-based options and really looking at how to develop that program. So it's going to look very different than what we have been offering under our emergency closure plan. So as we know and build that program, we will offer parents an option to change their enrollment in the fall.
Okay, so parents will confirm their enrollment shortly.
Next week.
Then they can change that again in August when we have very clear guidelines,
right,
and a plan for what in-person school looks like, and very clear guidelines and a description for what distance learning looks like. All of that will be provided for parents in August before they have to make a final decision. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. And then Chris, is part of the survey for our Heights parents regarding busing, will that be for parents to indicate, yes, we are wanting to make use of the transportation versus no, thank you, I think I'll drive my child?
Yeah, so I'm looking to get information on whether your people are planning to use busing. And then if they're using busing, would you like to use busing from Del Mar Hills Academy directly, or a community kind of neighborhood pickup? And those two pieces are really kind of important pieces that will help us to work with the busing company on adding some more detail, and then getting, again, maybe not a full commitment from community members, but a little bit more of a commitment and a desire to use busing, and then using some information on where people live, we can start building out where community pickups might be.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, can you speak to the number of students coming to Ocean Air and the number of staff coming to Ocean Air, also considering front office staff, and then what we anticipate the total enrollment will be if nobody took advantage of distance learning. And then maybe you can hand it over to Jenny, and Jenny, you could share what the initial percentages were based on that initial ask of parents.
Okay. So we anticipate Ocean Air being at somewhere in the 570 to 580 student range next year based on a large 6th grade cohort that will be promoting out and the pattern of kindergarten cohorts and the numbers we've had recently. We would also anticipate about 210 students from Del Mar Heights coming to Ocean Air. And so that would give us a combined enrollment of 780 to 790 total enrollment at Ocean Air. With that, we would have 3 grade levels of staff, which would be 8 or 9 teachers that would come. There would be some support staff. In addition, there will be some special ed staff that would come. There will be front office staff in a office assistant, admin assistant, front office staff member, as well as a health tech who will come to Ocean Air. And there will be a principal or assistant principal who would be on campus on a daily basis to support from an administrative point of view. In addition, there will be custodial staff that will be coming to help out as well.
Okay, and I'll take the second part of that. And our preliminary survey that we conducted last week, we had a great response from families. We had 60% of our respondents indicate that their child would be enrolled in a on-site, face-to-face program, and close to 40% opting for distance learning.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, can you speak a little bit to timeline and confidence with getting the project started, timeline over the course of next year, and confidence with the project being completed on time?
We will be starting the project. We're already in the process of the planning and bidding, and then there will be the beginning of demo in most likely the very beginning of July, potentially the very end of June. And then the project will go through demolition, site grading and site work, and then starting to build the site pads and the buildings. That will begin in the fall, and then we'd be moving through construction with an anticipated construction completion of mid to late August of 2021. We have, again, Balfour Beatty construction, and we have a combination of a executive team member, a project manager, and a superintendent on the team who have all been involved in projects where they have had to do rebuilds or new builds or major modernizations at, say, like high school campuses in the same range of a $40 to $50 million that's been done over the course of a 14, give or take, month timeline. So we have a confidence in the team. And on top of it, our architects have been involved in some similar projects as well. So all across the board, we've worked to create a team that would be able to get this job done in time as well.
Great, thank you. And Chris, could you just revisit those numbers, total number of students at the Heights, how many coming to Ocean Air, and then how many students projected to go to Del Mar Hills?
The total number at the Heights is about 440. 210 of those would come to Ocean Air. Ocean Air is currently about 610 students, and they are projected to be in the 570 to 580 range based on the number of 6th graders that will promote out and the number of kindergartners that have been a part of incoming classes over the last couple of years. So when you put those numbers together, we would be at 780, 790 students for next year.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, can you please provide our website address where email can be found for any of our district staff, leadership, as well as board members?
Right on our front page, www.dmusd.org. There is a district contacts. So I'm gonna actually, I will do this. Let's do this. I'm gonna pull it up and I will just share it with, share my screen so you can see. Just one moment. So if you go to our front page, www.dmusd.org, you don't need the DMUSD after it. It's putting it in as part of the, and just, and you scroll down here, we have district contact information, click here, and then on that page, you have contact information for each school site, each department. And then we also have all of our departments here that you can go to and our board of trustees that you can go to on our top tabs. So again, from dmusd.org, district contact information.
Great, thank you, Chris. And then, Chris, you've talked a lot about how we intend to mitigate traffic during high times of drop-off, pickup. Has there been given any consideration, and as part of the conversation, is traffic control, any assistance with that been part of our conversation and planning?
Traffic control beyond our school, the mouth of the school, we have not talked about further efforts that would go into the community to control traffic, no. We have talked about, again, we currently have a person who breaks traffic and allows people to cross the street, staff member at the mouth of Ocean Air School. We're talking about, we're continuing to try to work with Ocean Air Rec to get the busing and parking there and looking at what parking we have on the school site. But as far as traffic control beyond the school boundaries, we do not have we have not done work or plans. We've had conversations with city about parking and things like that, but not traffic control per se.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, can you just share a couple of examples of some social distancing measures that have been discussed or are already in place in other countries as schools have already reopened, and what that might look like? And then there is a question about vaccines and how might a vaccine impact our children and their ability to return to school.
Okay, so as far as social distancing and the possibilities for that, we are looking at, like Shelley said, are all different possibilities as far as reduced capacity in classrooms. So again, depending on the public health order, but some of the things that are happening in other countries are smaller class sizes, keeping desks 6 feet apart, children eating lunch in their classroom to avoid travel during a lunch period, really looking at outside spaces, utilizing outdoor spaces, and really utilizing our spaces throughout the district, looking at all of our available space. So we're really considering all of those different options. We're looking at modifying schedules if that is necessary. So depending again on number of students enrolled and the possibility of reduced capacity. So if there is a limitation on the number of students or people that we can have in a class at a given time, we would be prepared to meet those needs by looking at scheduling and staggering if we need to, or different cohorts, that kind of scheduling modification. As far as a vaccine, I am not an epidemiologist or a doctor, so I will say that there is no guarantee that there would be a vaccine. And so I think that one would come from the Department of Health and the Health and Human Services Agency, but we would be ready to move forward if given the green light to do so based on whatever health restrictions are in place. So again, I don't believe that we are waiting for a vaccine. That is not the outcome that we're waiting for. We're ready to move forward with any restrictions that are put in place right now for us to make it to be prepared for our students to return to school.
Great, thank you. And then, Chris, could you perhaps address the use of funds as we move forward with this project?
So the Delmar Heights School rebuild, as well as the major modernizations and Pacific Highlands Ranch Schools new construction, are all being funded by our Measure general obligation bond, and by Mello-Roos or CFD money. And so those taxes are local taxes that our community pays, and then goes strictly towards facilities in the district, and facilities modernization, construction. And so we can't actually use those monies on general fund expenditures, or teacher salaries, or school books or Chromebooks or things like that. They have to be used for construction. And the other piece to be aware of is when you receive bond funds, you are receiving them under the expectation, and actually the requirement from the government, that we are going to spend 85% within 3 years. And so the fact that we have a fair number, $55 million in bond funds, we need to spend 85% of them in 3 years from when we first pulled them in October of last year. We really actually need to do some of the construction to maintain that time frame. And again, it can't be used towards general fund or other expenditures should there be any budget shortfalls.
Great, thank you. And then again, Chris, just revisiting the number of students Ocean Air was built to accommodate.
So Ocean Air was built to accommodate over 800 students. It was built to be a large school. And we have had over 800 students, just over 800 students in the past at Ocean Air. I believe 2014 was when we hit the peak, and we were a little over 800 students. So it has been that size in the past and is built, and therefore the infrastructure is certainly built for this number of students.
Great, thank you. And then I am looking again just to revisit the initial percentage of parents that opted for in-person learning based on what we know right now in the moment. I think Jenny shared that was 60%, and the initial percentage of students opting into distance learning based on information available right now was 40%. So Jenny, could you just once more repeat the timeline where parents will have the opportunity to select 2 more times before we finalize enrollment for the new school year?
Yes, thank you. So our survey last week was really just to give us a ballpark idea of the level of interest in a district learning option. And based on that survey, we will be, like we talked about, having an opportunity for families to provide input on distance learning starting tomorrow through our thought exchange. And then the following week, we will be asking, and we will be requiring families to confirm their enrollment. So there will be a new enrollment form coming out next week for parents to indicate if they would like their child to participate in distance learning or continue with their initial enrollment option. And then over the summer, the committee will continue to develop and establish a comprehensive distance learning program. And as we are able to communicate that out to the community in August, parents will have one more opportunity to amend their enrollment choice prior to the beginning of the school year.
Great, thank you. And then Chris, just some concern about the state budget shortfall, how that might affect schools, and does that run the risk of affecting our project?
Yeah, the state budget shortfall will not affect our construction projects. The impact it may have to the general fund would be more related to, the general fund pays, this is, Kathy Burks would say it better than I, but it really pays a large portion of our general fund pays for salaries and benefits. And then there are funds that go some towards special ed and some towards purchases like our some of our restricted maintenance or our technology and things like that. So none of those are facilities, and there's no way to cross those funds back and forth between each other. So there's no benefits to the general fund of not doing the projects because we can't use those facilities dollars towards the general fund.
Great, thank you. And then Jenny, could you just once more revisit the students on campus and the campus size, your communication with Health and Human Services, and how we receive those guidelines to ensure that our staff and students remain safe?
Yes, so I am working with the County Office of Education in conjunction with the Departments of Public Health. Our school nurses are also part of that team, working with the County Office of Education, and we're attending weekly meetings and in communication with them throughout the week regarding what the restrictions will look like or what they are currently, what we speculate, and how to prepare. So each school district is considering a reopening plan, and that's what we are actively preparing based on the idea that we will be flexible to accommodate any restrictions that may be updated or change during the summer as we move into August.
Great, thank you. And then, Chris, a question: can a request be made in the special circumstances to instead use the funds for strengthening safety measures on campus?
It would depend on the safety measure. So some safety measures may be, if they're, to spend our bond dollars, it really has to be in the bond language, and therefore it would have to be, it would depend on the request. It may be something that we could do, and it may be something that is an improvement we could make, but it would really depend on the bond language that the voters passed.
Great, thank you. Okay. It appears that the chat stream is taking a rest. We have a few more minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris and let him wrap up this evening.
Thank you. So I would just first like to thank Jenny for spending the time and being able to share more about what the district is doing to prepare across the district, the committee work you're doing. I know that there are a lot of uncertainties that have come in front of us, and there is a lot of work going into planning for and thinking about the potential outcomes so that we're prepared. And so I thank you for all the work you're doing and for your time tonight. And Shelley, I know it's not an easy job to moderate, as you're getting a bunch of comments through and trying to craft them and bring them together into questions for us. So I appreciate you taking the time and serving the questions up for us. So thank you for that as well. And then I just want to say to the community, thank you for spending the time. A great showing, a lot of people on here. It's 63 people when I just looked up. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate the questions and the time. And just know that our next steps are, there are a number of things related directly to the relocation with busing and items like that. And then there's the work that we're doing as a district to ensure that we are taking steps to prepare for whatever August may look like, and ensure that across the district we are making good decisions and good steps that will help all of our students, staff, and community come back safely. So we appreciate your time, and we hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.